Good morning, students. We're going to continue with our chapters. So this is the third chapter, which is coordinate geometry. So second chapter is not included in your first term examination, which will be conducted in November, okay? Regarding which I'll be giving you more details when I call you separately in the school. So we're going to start that from day after tomorrow. We'll be calling students according to 10 students each I'll be calling, and I'll be explaining about portfolio, and I'll be explaining about the rest of the things also. So do not worry about that. But okay, so from today's video, we're going to start with chapter 3, okay? Chapter 3, that is coordinate geometry. Now, before starting our chapter, we need to understand what coordinate geometry is, right? Now, what is geometry? Geometry means the study or the branch of mathematics that deals with distance, shape, size and position, right? Geometry means it is the study of distance, shape, size, position, etc. of a point, an object, an element, etc. Okay, so that is what geometry is. Now, what is coordinate geometry? Let's see. Now, coordinate geometry means it is the study of distance, shape, size and position by using the coordinate system, okay? By using the coordinate system. So what is this coordinate system? We're going to study that deeply in this chapter. Okay, so let's start with our chapter mainly. Okay, so coordinate system means it is a system in which we use one or more numbers or coordinates to show the position, size, shape, etc. of elements. Okay. So now look at this. Let me explain it to you in a much more clearer manner. Now, what is coordinate system? Because by that one definition, you'll not understand it, right? So let's understand it in a more clearer manner. Now look here. This is a line. You know that it is a line, right? On line, how do we represent things? We represent points. Yes or no? So when we connect a lot of points, we get line. So this is a line, you know that. Now what is a plane? You know that a plane is a flat surface, right? A flat surface that extends to this side also infinitely and to this side also infinitely. So this is a plane. Like for example, the screen that you can see is also a plane, you know that, right? So you know what a line and a plane is, right? Now, 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 you know what a number line is, right? Now, on a number line, how do you represent numbers? You represent 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. All the positive numbers on this side, and -1, -2, -3, -4, etc. All the negative numbers on this side, right? So that is how you represent the numbers on a number line, and you know that, right? Now, if I tell you draw or mark the point 2, how will you mark the point 2? First, you look at the origin. 0 is called the origin, the starting point, right? The starting point is called the origin. So from the origin, you look, this is 1, then this is 2. So this is 2, this point is 2. So I'll mark 2 here, right? And what does this point mean? This point means that this point is at 2 units to the right of the origin, right? This point is at what distance? This point is at 2 units to the right of origin, right? So likewise, if I tell you to plot the point -3, how will you plot? So you'll plot the point -3 here. Why? Because this is 1, 2, 3. So this is 3 units to the left of the origin, or 3 units to the left of 0. So that is to the left and to the right. So you know the distance, right? So this is called the distance of the origin of the point from the origin, and this is also called the distance of the point from the origin, right? So you know how to plot distance of a point on a number line. So likewise, if I tell you that there is a point here, if I tell you there's a point here, can you find the distance of this point? Yes. How can you find the distance? You'll definitely use a ruler, or you'll look at the number line and you'll measure the distance from the origin to this point. So you can tell the distance, right? So now we studied about the distance. So what is the study of distance? Study of distance deals with what? It is geometry. Geometry is the study of distance, position, etc. Right? So we have studied geometry right now. We have dealt with geometry right now, right? So likewise, let's look at a plane. Now, if on a number line, if I give you any point, you'll be able to tell me the distance of that point. You'll be able to tell me the position of that point, right? So likewise, let's look at the distance or the position of elements using a plane, okay? Now look at this point, this yellow point that I've marked here. Now this is a plane. This green area you can see it's a plane, right? You know what is a plane. Now on this plane I have marked a point here, which is this yellow dot. So I have marked a point here and I am telling you to determine the position of this point or the distance of this point. So you can see that I can find the distance of this point in two ways. How? Either from the left or from the right, and from the top or from the bottom. So you can see that there is two ways of finding out the distance. So two forms of distance are there. One is from in this manner, which is top or bottom, and another one is in this manner, which is from the right or from the left, right? So on a plane, any point will have two types of distance. What type of distance? One is from the top or the bottom, and one is from the left or the right, right? So that is how we measure distance of a point in a plane, right? Now why did I explain this? Because we are going to be dealing with points in a plane, that is two-dimensional system. Two dimension means two dimensions. So one dimension means what? One dimension is the one which we saw on a line. Why one dimension? Why was it one dimensional on a line? Because we had only one point to represent it. If it was 0, it was 0. So this is 0. So if it was 1, if it is minus 1, it is minus 1. So this is minus 1. So there is only one dimension. There is only one number to represent the point, right? So likewise, when we represent a point in a plane, we are representing it using a two-dimensional method. Two dimensions means there are two dimensions. One dimension is from the left or from the right, and the other dimension is from the top or from the bottom. Okay, so that is what two dimension is, right? So therefore, whatever distances, whatever positions we show or represent on a plane, we are using the two-dimensional method to show it. So therefore, a plane is called a two-dimensional surface, right? A two-dimensional representation. Okay, so let's study in detail. Now, so in a plane, how do we represent things? Let's study how do we represent in a two-dimensional way, or in a plane, how do we represent the position? Okay, let's study that, because this is the main portion of the chapter. We have stepped into the main portion of the chapter. So listen carefully from this on. Okay, so now look here. If you do not look at this line, then you can see that this is a number line, right? This is one number line. You can see that 0 is in the middle. Then there are positive numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. All the positive numbers, right? And you can see that all the negative numbers are on this side, right? So you can see that this is a number line. The number line which has 0 in the middle and 1, 2, 3, etc. on this side, and minus 1, minus 2, etc. on this side, right? So this is a number line. You can see that, right? Now, if you don't look at this, then can you see that this is also a number line? You can see that this is also a number line. Now look at this number line. 0 is in the middle, positive numbers are on top, and negative numbers are below. So this is also a number line. So in a plane, we can put two number lines in perpendicular to each other. Okay, two number lines perpendicular to each other. Now perpendicular means what? Perpendicular means any two lines when are they called perpendicular? Any two lines when they are at 90-degree angles, right? Here these two lines are at 90-degree angles, right? You can see that. You can see that these two lines are at 90-degree angles, right? Any position you take, there will be 90 degrees, right? 90-degree angles. So therefore, this line is called, these number lines are perpendicular to each other, right? So when we put two number lines perpendicular to each other, then they'll meet at a point in the middle called the origin. So this point is called the origin. Okay. So what is called the origin? The point at which the two number lines meet in a plane is called the origin of that plane. Okay, of that coordinate system. Okay. Now look at this. Now x dash. Can you see this? X dash. So this is 0x, right? And this is 0 x dash. So can you see this entire number line, this horizontal number line is called x dash. So this x dash number line is called the x axis. What is it called? The x axis. So this is called the x axis. Okay. And the y dash, line. Can you see this line? This is the y dash line, right? Y dash line. So this is called the y axis. So this is the y axis and this is the x axis. Okay. So this is what in a coordinate system, this is how we represent. Okay, in a coordinate system in 2 dimension in a plane, this is how we represent the numbers. Okay, the first number line is x x dash and the second number line is y y dash. And how do they meet? They do not meet like this or like this. No, they meet at perpendicular places, right? They meet in a perpendicular manner. And where do they meet? They meet at the origin. So this is what is these two axes combined is called the coordinate axis. Okay, so the x-axis and the y-axis together are called the coordinate axis. Now what is axis? Why do we have axis here and why do we have axis here? Axis means singular, one, right? X-axis, y-axis. So this is x-axis, this is y-axis, and both together, plural is axis. Okay, so this together, both of them together, the x-axis and the y-axis together are called the coordinate axis. Okay, coordinate axis. Co means what? Co means together, right? So they are together. And ordinate means what? Ordinate means something that shows the position, right? So that is why it's called coordinate axis. Okay, so these axes are used to show the position of a point in a plane. Okay, now let's look at that more detail. So this is called the y-axis and the x-axis. This is the positive x-axis. This is the negative x-axis. This is the positive y-axis and this is the negative y-axis. And you can see that both of these are number lines and they coincide or they meet or they intersect at a point called the origin. Okay, this O is called the origin. Okay, remember this much points. Now the next one. Now the plane which constitutes of, the plane which is made up of the x-axis and the y-axis is called the Cartesian plane or the coordinate plane or the xy plane. You can call any one of these, Cartesian plane or coordinate plane or xy plane. So this plane which is made up of the two number lines are called what? It is called the Cartesian plane or the coordinate plane or the xy plane. Okay, so this is the xy plane or the coordinate plane or the Cartesian plane. Now next point. Now you can see that the axis, the coordinate axis, divide this plane into 4 parts, and these 4 parts are called the 4 quadrants. Okay, these 4 parts are called the 4 quadrants. So what is the first quadrant? This part is called the first quadrant. You can see this square is called the first quadrant. Okay, and we go in this direction, in the anti-clockwise direction. We go in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay, clockwise means what? Clock, usually the hands of the clock go in this direction, right? So anti-clockwise means in the opposite direction. So we have to count it in the opposite direction. So this square is the first quadrant, right? And this square is the second quadrant. Okay, and this is the third quadrant and this is the fourth quadrant. Okay, so if you look at the first quadrant, you can see that all the numbers on the y-axis and the x-axis are positive, right? First quadrant, both x and y are positive. Now in the second quadrant, you can see that x is negative and y will be positive. We'll do this in detail later on. Okay, and in the third quadrant, you can see that both x-axis and y-axis are negative, right? And in the fourth quadrant, the x-axis is positive and the y-axis is negative. So you can see that the plane is divided into 4 quadrants or 4 parts by the coordinate axis. Okay, now the next point is, okay, so now look at this. I drew a point here. Okay, I drew a point here. Can you see this point? Yes, this red dot, right? So this is a point. Now look here. This point is at a distance of 4 units. It can be centimeter, kilometer, whatever it is, depending on the question. It's at a distance of 4 units from the y-axis. Now, how is this distance measured? Did I measure this distance like this? Did I measure it like this? Did I measure it like this? No, I measured it straight. Can you see that? I measured it straight. Can you see that? Yes. So I measured it straight. So what kind of distance is this? This is the perpendicular distance. Why is it perpendicular? Because any distance that is 90 degrees is perpendicular, right? So this is the perpendicular distance, right? So this is the perpendicular distance. This is a perpendicular distance. Why? Because both these lines are at 90 degrees. So this is perpendicular. So likewise, if you turn this And look, you can see that these two lines are perpendicular. So can you see this line, this orange line, and this y-axis are perpendicular, right? So the perpendicular distance from the y-axis, okay, from y-axis measured along the x-axis. Can you see this line? This distance is measured along the x-axis. Along the x-axis means what? In the direction of the x-axis. It's parallel to the x-axis, right? So it's along the x-axis. So can you see that this distance is measured from y-axis along the x-axis? So from y-axis we are starting to measure perpendicular, right? The perpendicular distance from y-axis along the x-axis is called the x-coordinate, okay? Is called the x-coordinate of this point. So what is the x-coordinate of this point? The perpendicular distance measured from the x-axis along the y-axis is called the x-coordinate of this point, okay? So again, the perpendicular distance, right? The perpendicular distance measured from the y-axis along the x-axis is called the x-coordinate, okay? So what is the x-coordinate of this point? 4, right? What is the x-coordinate of this point? -4. Why? Because this is the perpendicular distance. As you can see, it's perpendicular, right? Perpendicular from the y-axis along the x-axis, right? So this point's x-coordinate is what? -4. This point's x-coordinate is what? 4. So you can see that this is the x-coordinate and this is the x-coordinate, right? So let's understand what is the y-coordinate. So y-coordinate is the distance measured, the perpendicular distance. What kind of distance? Not like this, not like this, not like this. What kind of distance? Perpendicular distance. So the perpendicular distance, you can see these two lines are perpendicular. The x-axis and this orange line are perpendicular, right? So the perpendicular distance measured from the x-axis, okay, we are starting to measure from the x-axis, right? So the perpendicular distance measured from the x-axis along the y-axis, parallel to the y-axis, right? So along the y-axis is called the y-coordinate of the point, okay? So what is the y-coordinate? The distance, the perpendicular distance. What type of distance? The perpendicular distance measured from the x-axis along the y-axis is called the y-coordinate. So what is the y-coordinate of this point? 5. 5 is the y-coordinate of this point, okay? Now, what is the y-coordinate of this point? It's -3. Why? Because the perpendicular distance, right, measured from the x-axis along the y-axis is called the x. Is called the what coordinate? It's called the y coordinate from the x-axis, right? So let me explain it once more. Let me summarize it for you once more. The perpendicular distance, what type of distance? Both cases perpendicular distance, not ulta-pulta distances, no, perpendicular distance, right? So what kind of distance? Perpendicular distance in both cases. So the perpendicular distance from the x-axis along the y-axis, right? The perpendicular distance in both the cases, the distances are perpendicular, you can see. And from the x-axis along the y-axis is called the y-coordinate. From the y-axis along the x-axis is called the x-coordinate, right? And the perpendicular distance from the x-axis along the y-axis is called the y-coordinate, and from the y-axis along the x-axis is called the x-coordinate. So what is the x-coordinate of this point? 4. What is the y-coordinate of this point? 5. What is the x-coordinate of this point? -4. What is the y-coordinate of this point? -3. Right? So now let's look at it. So the x-coordinate is called the abscissa and the y-coordinate is called the ordinate. Okay? So whenever you want to represent a point in a plane, how do you represent? On a number line, how did we represent points? When we had a number line, how did we represent? 0, 1. So we used a single digit, single dimension, a single number to represent that point, right? But in a plane, we need two numbers. That is why it's two-dimensional, right? So we need two numbers to represent a point in a plane. So this red point here is represented by two numbers. The first number is called the abscissa and the second number is called the ordinate. So you can see we represent it this way. First number is called the abscissa. Second number is called the ordinate. Okay, how do you remember? A comes first, right? So abscissa comes first. Okay, so remember like that. So first number is called the abscissa. Second number is called the ordinate. Abscissa is also called the x coordinate and ordinate is also called the y coordinate. Okay. So this is the x coordinate, this is the y coordinate, or this is the abscissa and this is the ordinate, right? So how did we get the abscissa? Abscissa means the distance of the x-axis, right? The distance on the x-axis. So how much distance is it from the y-axis? It is at 4 units from the y-axis. So you can see that, right? So the distance on the x-axis is the abscissa. So 4 units on the x-axis, abscissa. And this point is 5 at a distance of 5 units from the y-axis. So this is ordinate. Ordinate is 5, right? So 4 and 5, right? So 4, 5 is the point name. So the name or the position of the point is 4, 5. Likewise, the position of this point is what? 4. First, you write the x-axis. So minus 4 is on the x-axis. It's minus 4 distance. So minus 4. And on the y-axis, it is at a minus 3 distance. So minus 3 is in the ordinate, right? So that is how you represent it. First, you write the abscissa and then you write the ordinate, okay? So now we know what is the abscissa and ordinate of a point, right? So likewise, here again, this point, what is the abscissa? It's 4. And what is the ordinate? It's 5, right? And what is the abscissa of this one? Minus 4. And what is the ordinate? Minus 3. So like that itself, the origin is also a point in the plane. So origin will also have an abscissa and ordinate. What is the abscissa and ordinate of origin? It is 0 and 0. So abscissa and ordinate both are 0, 0 of origin. So origin is the point 0, 0, right? Now we have seen earlier that both the axis, the coordinate axis, the x-axis and the y-axis divides the plane into 4 regions, 4 squares, right? The first square is called the first quadrant. Then the second one is the second quadrant, third quadrant and fourth quadrant. Now if you see here, all the points that lay in the first quadrant will have abscissa and ordinate both positive, right? Because why? Because x-axis and y-axis are all, if you see, it's positive, right? Now second quadrant, the y-axis will be positive, the ordinate will be positive and the abscissa will be negative because the x-axis you can see is negative. In the second quadrant, negative, positive. So negative, positive, right? So likewise in the third quadrant, both x-axis and y-axis are all negative. You can see that. So definitely abscissa and ordinate both will be negative, right? Now in the fourth quadrant, you can see that the abscissa will be positive because x-axis is positive and the ordinate will be negative because the y-axis is negative, right? So here both are positive, here negative positive, here negative negative and here positive negative, right? So it's easy to remember because you know how the axis works, right? The axis on top it's positive and to the right it's positive. Then here and here it's negative, right? So you can see this is negative positive, positive negative, and here positive positive, negative negative. So it goes in this direction and you have to remember it, okay? So the first quadrant both will be positive, second quadrant negative positive, third negative negative, fourth positive negative, right? So this is how the abscissa and the ordinate of each quadrant will be. Now if you're given a point, let's try to find out the coordinates. So how do I find out the coordinates of this point A? What will be the abscissa? Abscissa is x, so I need to look at x, right? So how far is it from y-axis? On the x-axis you have to see the distance. So how far is it? Minus 3. So definitely the abscissa will be minus 3, right? And what will be the ordinate? Ordinate is always measured on the y-axis. So what is the y-axis? 5. So ordinate will be 5. So what are the points of A? A is minus 3, 5. So can you see minus 3, 5. So minus 3, 5, right? So A will be minus 3, 5. And what about B? What is B? B is again x-axis first. So minus 5, then minus 4. So minus 5, minus 4, right? So let's see. A will be minus 3, 5, minus 3, 5. So minus 3, 5, right? That means it is minus 3 distant away from the origin on the x-axis and 5 distant away from the origin on the y-axis, right? And minus 5 distance from the origin on the x-axis, minus 4 distance from the origin on the y-axis, right? So minus 5, minus 4. So remember, first is the x-axis, then the y-axis. Abscissa, ordinate. So when we have a point in a plane, we can definitely find out both the coordinates, the x coordinate and the y coordinate we can find out, right? Now let's look at the points of this. Try to think about what will be the coordinates of A, B and C in your mind. Let me give you 5 minutes. Yes, so here you can see that A is x-axis. What is the x-axis? What is the x coordinate? Minus 5. A is at minus 5, right? So minus 5 will be the x-axis. And what will be the y-axis? Y-axis, it's at 5, right? 5 on the y-axis. So it is 5. So minus 5, 5 will be the coordinate of the point A, right? So likewise, what will be the coordinate of point B? X-axis again first. So x-axis is what? 2. So 2 is the x-axis. Then what is on the y-axis? Y-axis is minus 4. You can see that, right? So minus 4. So 2 minus 4. And what will be the point of C? C is at x-axis 5. 5 is on the x-axis and 4 is on the y-axis. So you can see 5 is on the x-axis and 4 is on the y-axis. So 5, 4 will be the point of C, right? Let's see that. So here you can see clearly minus 5, 5, right? Minus 5 and 5. Then you can see for C it is 4 and 5. So 5 comes first because 5 is abscissa. Then 2 and 4, minus 4, right? So like that, any point given in the plane, you can write the abscissa and ordinate, right? So likewise, if I give you points, for here example, I gave you points here. 3 points I've given you. Can you plot that on the paper, on the plane? Can you plot it? Yes, definitely, right? So let's try to plot it. So minus 3, 2. So first is minus 3. First one is minus 3, 2. So let's plot this one, okay? Let's plot this one first. Minus 3, 2. So you can see that x coordinate is minus 3. So let's take minus 3. So where is minus 3? Minus 3 is here. And where is 2? 2 on the y-axis. So 2 is here. 2 on the y-axis, right? So how do we coordinate? How do we draw the point? Minus 3, 2, right? So minus 3 from the x-axis and 2 from the y-axis. So this is minus 3, 2, right? So you have to draw straight lines, right? 2 straight lines. So this is the point, right? So this is the point, okay? So you don't have to draw the lines. Instead, you directly, what do? You just plot the point. How do you plot the point? You know that this is minus 3 and you know that this is 2. So how do you plot the point? You bring it from minus 3 and 2, you draw 2 lines and where they intersect is your point, right? So now B, how do you do this one? Let's try this one. 5 minus 4. So 5 is on the x-axis, this one. We know that 5 is this. And minus 4 on the y-axis. So minus 4 on the y-axis. So you draw 2 straight lines and where do they intersect? They intersect at this point, right? So look, you draw 2 straight lines. This is not a straight line, you have to draw a straight line, okay? So you draw a straight line and the point where they intersect is your point, right? So definitely the point is going to be here, right? So you can see the yellow dot. So this is your point, right? So and here this is your point, right? So the third one, 2, 5, both are positive. So definitely first quadrant, 2 in the x-axis and 5 in the y-axis. So 2 in the x-axis. So you draw a straight line from here like this and another one from here like this. And where do they intersect? They intersect here, right? So what is your point? Your point is this one, right? So when you look at the coordinates itself, you'll know which axis or which quadrant they are at. Which quadrant? This one, the first one, minus 3, 2. Minus 3, 2, you know that the x-axis is negative and the y-axis is positive. So this will be in the second quadrant, right? In the second quadrant. Now 5 minus 4. So you know one is positive, that is x is positive, and y is negative. So you know that it will be here. So positive, negative, it will be here. And if it was both positive, like the third one, both positive case, you know that it will be here. So the point will be here, right? So positive, positive. And if I give you another one, can you try this by yourself? Minus 4, minus 6. Can you try it? So x coordinate will be minus and y coordinate also minus. So minus 4, minus 6. So where will be the point? Here. So both are negative. So it will be here in the third quadrant, right? So plotting points is also easy. So you try it by yourself, okay? Try different numbers by yourself, and when we'll be doing exercises, we'll be doing more questions of the same type. So this chapter is all the concepts of this chapter has been cleared in this video. We'll be doing only exercises in the next video. So this chapter is over. So main points in this chapter are what? First, you need to know what is coordinate geometry, right? Then you have to know why we plotted this. How can we represent a point in a plane? How do we represent? We represent a point in a plane by using the x and y coordinates. And what are these x and y coordinates called? The x coordinate is from the x-axis, y coordinates from the y-axis. This is called the abscissa, and this is called the ordinate, right? And why do we use this? We use this to show the distance or the position of a point in a plane. So this is a plane. This entire thing is a plane, right? And how do we represent a point? We represent a point by using a dot in the plane, right? So how do I represent a point? Suppose this is a point. So what is the distance of this point? What is the position of this point? I can say that this is at a distance of minus 4 from the x-axis. From the y-axis it is at a distance of minus 4, and from the y-axis it is at a distance of how much? 4, right? So I can say that, and I can represent this as minus 4, 4. So I can say that this is the position, or this is the point that this point represents. This is the distance or the position of that point, right? So likewise, in order to find the distance or the position of a point in a plane, we use the coordinate geometry. So this is all about this chapter. This is a very important concept, because we'll be using this concept in a lot of other chapters. Okay, now see, imagine, let me tell you one more small thing. See, imagine all these points. Suppose I find points here, different points. All these points have 1 1 1 1 value, right? This one is what? This one is 2 2, right? Then this one is what? This one is 3 3. Then this is 4 4. This is 5 5. Then this is 6 6. So if you can see, if I join all these points, what will I get? I'll get a straight line, right? So like that, different types of concepts we are going to study, and in all those concepts we are going to be naming points as x, y. And what is this first point called? This is called the abscissa. And what is this called? This is called the coordinate, right? So that is how we have studied up until now. So coordinate and abscissa, very important points. And what is this plane called? This plane where we are representing all these two dimensions, where the x dimension and the y dimension, the plane we are representing, this plane is entirely called what? Cartesian plane, or the coordinate plane, or the xy plane, right? So whatever we have studied in this video, very important concepts. Our chapter is over in this video itself. We'll be doing the exercises in the next video and some more examples to make it clear and fortify your concepts. But make sure that you watch this video again and again. It's a really scoring chapter, very easy chapter. So make sure that your concepts are clear, because these concepts you'll be using in your higher classes and in the chapters to come. Okay, so make sure you study properly, you practice, you revise, and you repeat the process. Okay, so see you in the next video. Watch this video and study well.